Welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha, a podcast shared by David Roylance. This podcast is dedicated to guiding you to completely eliminate the discontent mind and the suffering it causes by attaining enlightenment. Learn and practice the teachings of Gotama Buddha that will guide you to fully attain a peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy. To support this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha or visit buddhadailywisdom.com, where you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online learning resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Now, here's our teacher to share more.
Sawadee Kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our group learning program, and we're really going to be getting started with the teachings today. In our last class, we started off just introducing the program and kind of welcoming everybody and helping you understand what the group learning program is with a little few basic teachings of what is a Buddha, what is the path to enlightenment, and what is enlightenment itself. But today we're really going to dive in deep and really get started with the path to enlightenment and helping you to understand what it takes to move the mind to this enlightened mental state. Over the course of 3 classes in the next 3 weeks, you're going to get a really deep dive into understanding what the path to enlightenment is by us breaking down the Eightfold Path into 3 individual sections. We're going to be going through each one of these using the words of the Buddha and helping you to deeply understand what the path to enlightenment is, so that over the next 3 classes, you'll have a very healthy perspective of what it takes to develop your life practice and help you get to the enlightened mental state. This is part of this book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment, that you can download from buddhadailywisdom.com, or you can order it on Amazon, or you can even just take the file and go print it yourself if you'd like. This book, chapters 4 and 5, is what I'm going to be teaching over the next 3 Sundays. And then on Wednesdays, I'm sharing breathing mindfulness meditation right now in a 4-part series where I'm helping you to build up your meditation practice. So I'd like to welcome all of you, whether you're joining for the first time or you've been joining regularly. I'm going to be sharing some visual aids here to help you guys understand what it is I'm going to be teaching you, so that I can guide you through learning and understanding the Eightfold Path. This Eightfold Path that the Buddha shared, this is the core central teaching. This is the path to enlightenment. So when you're interested in getting to enlightenment through the teachings of the Buddha, you would need to learn the Eightfold Path. An individual is going to know that inside and out, backwards and forwards, left, right, up, down, by the time they make their way to even the first stage of enlightenment, let alone enlightenment itself. So this is a teaching that you're most likely going to need to revisit multiple times. So that's why right here at the very beginning, I'm going to take my time in 3 separate classes and go into each section in detail. The wisdom section, the moral conduct section, and the mental discipline section. And then once we start with chapter 1, 2, 3, and so forth, we're going to explore chapter 4 as an individual chapter. We're going to explore it in chapter 5. So you're going to get a chance to revisit this even in this program a couple of times. And then even beyond this program, you're probably going to be interested in revisiting this. And that's why you have the book, you have the videos, you have the podcast. There's little mini lessons that I've taught on each individual step. You're going to need to revisit this and kind of dial it in closer and closer. We're going to start today with right view and helping you understand right view and right intention, this wisdom section of the Eightfold Path. But keep in mind that we do have this 3-part series that I'm going to be sharing with you over the course of the next 3 Sundays. So today we're doing part 1. Next Sunday on the 27th, we'll be doing part 2, which is the moral conduct section of right speech, right action, and right livelihood. When I'm sharing this with you, it's important to understand that the Buddha didn't teach a bunch of rules or commandments or things that he's maybe trying to guilt or shame or fear you into doing, or certain punishments or rewards. He didn't teach any of that kind of stuff. He's helping you you to understand how we can interact in the world in very wise ways so that our speech and our actions and our livelihood isn't causing harm to others. And by us eliminating the harm that we cause to others through our decisions around moral conduct, it will improve what we experience in life. That we will see that if we're polite, kind, friendly, and respectful, for example, that we'll tend to be experiencing politeness, kindness, friendliness, and respect coming back to us. But we're going to get into it in a lot more detail when we talk about the moral conduct section, because this is going to help clean up the way that you might interact with others. You might feel like you have the very best intentions in certain situations in the way that you're speaking or your actions or so forth. But if you don't understand the natural laws of existence based on what the Buddha shared, then you may have the very best intentions, but because of that lack of wisdom, you might be doing things that are harmful to others without even realizing it. Then we're going to be sharing on the 3rd of September, which is 2 Sundays from now, the mental discipline section, which is right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. This is where you're going to learn how to train the mind and gain control over the feelings that you're experiencing. So there's the learning part that we're going to be doing in all of these classes. Then I'm going to be helping you reflect and showing you how to independently verify the teachings. Then I'm going to show you how to practice the teaching so that you can actually transform the mind and get the real results through doing the work on a day-by-day basis. There's, of course, meditation that you're learning, but there's other aspects of this path that you'll need to learn as well. And as we go, I'm going to open up for questions so that you guys can ask any and all questions that you like related to the content that I'm sharing with you, because that's an important part of learning the teachings of the Buddha, that you have an opportunity to ask questions and get help and clarification. So I'm going to be pausing at a few times as we go and opening up to any questions. If you're in Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, you can put your questions into the comment section and I'll be able to see that. Or if you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any questions or follow-up questions directly. All right, so here we're moving into right view. I'm going to help you to understand what this is through using the words of the Buddha. It's very important as you embark on the journey to get to enlightenment that you use the original teachings of the Buddha, his words, to determine what did he teach and what he didn't teach. And then, as we talked last week, you're not believing any of the teachings that you're learning. You're learning those through the guidance of a teacher, through books and videos, classes, things like this. And then you're reflecting. That's where you independently verify what it is that's being taught, and then you're going to practice the teachings, and this is what transforms the mind. When you learn right view, the Buddha is going to provide you detailed teachings that explain the problem in the unenlightened mind, the cause, the elimination, and the path forward. The Buddha describes that you can have a breakthrough by understanding right view. The breakthrough is that you finally understand what's causing the sadness and anger and frustration and all these other discontent feelings, because you can't eliminate these discontent feelings if you don't understand what's causing them. So I'm going to use the words of the Buddha here to get us started, and then I'm going to dive into some details to be able to help you understand right view, and then we'll move on to right intention and talk about that. So here in the Eightfold Path, this core central teaching that his other teachings plug into, he says here, in what, monks, is right view? It is, monks, the wisdom of discontentedness, the wisdom of the cause of discontentedness, the wisdom of the elimination of discontentedness, and the wisdom of the way of practice leading to the elimination of discontentedness. This is called right view. What he's doing here is he's pointing to another teaching. He has a separate teaching from the Eightfold Path called the Four Noble Truths. Here, these statements that he's saying is part of the Eightfold Path, he's pointing to the Four Noble Truths, and he's saying that is right view. And then underneath of this line that I have, this is the top section of the Four Noble Truths. Below that, there's a lot more details where the Buddha is explaining the problem, the cause, the elimination, and the path forward of how to eliminate discontentedness. But I just put this top section in there to give you the confidence that what right view is the Four Noble Truths. And now I'm going to teach you the Four Noble Truths so that you can understand what they are. And I'm going to walk you through that process of learning, reflecting, and practicing. And in order for you to understand the Four Noble Truths, you need to first understand the three universal truths. These are like building blocks to help you understand the Four Noble Truths. You wouldn't really fully be able to understand the Four Noble Truths if you didn't understand the three universal truths. We call them truths because the Buddha knows that they're truth, I know that they're truth, and other people know that they're truth. But in order for you to gain the benefit of the three universal truths and the Four Noble Truths, you need to be able to know that they're truth. And that's why you don't believe what I'm sharing, that you're learning, reflecting, and practicing so you can acquire the wisdom. So let me explain to you what I mean by this learning, reflecting, and practicing that you've heard me reference so many times, because I'm going to teach you now the universal truth of impermanence, and then I'm going to help you reflect on it. So the learning part is really straightforward with the universal truth of impermanence. This is where the Buddha essentially is helping you to understand that everything is constantly changing, that there isn't any permanent fixed state with all these material objects, possessions, relationships, thoughts, ideas, states of mind. Everything in the world is constantly changing. There's even things called conditioned feelings or conditioned objects. These are things that arise, they change, and then they fade away. So the universal truth of impermanence is explaining that there's conditioned objects that arise, they change, and they fade away. That's a conditioned object. There are such things as unconditioned objects. So the enlightened mind is unconditioned. It doesn't have any conditions that are causing things like anger, sadness, frustration, and others. So the qualities of peace and joy in the enlightened mind, they do not arise, they don't change, and they don't fade away. They're just always there. But by and large, everything around you, all these material possessions and objects and relationships, thoughts, ideas, all these things are just constantly changing in our life. So this is a little bit of the learning, okay? So there's conditioned objects that arise, change, and fade away. And then there's unconditioned objects that do not arise, do not change, and don't fade away. So once you've done the learning, where the Buddha is explaining here this universal truth of impermanence, I'm explaining it to you, helping you to understand it. And now you start reflecting on it to try to determine if it's true or false. And the way that you do this is you try to determine if there's anything in the world that you can see that is permanent. Because if this is a universal truth, then it applies universally all around the world. So I suggest students start with reflecting on something that they're very familiar with, which is like this human body. You're very familiar with this human body. You ask yourself, is this human body permanent or is it impermanent? If it's permanent, that means it stays the same and it never, ever, ever changes. If it's impermanent, then you should be seeing this constant change in the physical body. So if I asked you if the body is permanent or impermanent, what would you say? Right? So what you've probably come back to is the body is impermanent. We've got hair that's constantly growing. We've got different colors of complexion on our skin that might change. You might get a pimple or a mole. You might get a wrinkle. Your hair might turn gray. You might lose your hair. We grew teeth when we were young and then they fell out and then more teeth grew back in. This is all impermanence. This physical body is impermanent. Now take something else. Take your relationships. Are your relationships permanent or impermanent? If they're permanent, that means you've had exactly the same people in your life your entire life. If your relationships are impermanent, then that means you've had people coming and going in and out of your life at different times. So what would you say? Are your relationships permanent or impermanent? And what you've probably come back to is that they're impermanent. So now take more things. Take things like your bank account. People usually laugh at this one, right? Is your bank account permanent or impermanent? Do you have exactly the same money in there all the time? Or is it going up and down and up and down? It's going up and down and up and down, right? For some of us, it might just go down, 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 right? So the bank account's changing. It's constantly changing. It's impermanent. What about your job or your occupation? Have you had exactly the same job or will you have exactly the same job your entire life? So if you will, or if you have had exactly the same job and done exactly the same work your entire life, that means your job's permanent. But if you've had different jobs at different times, if you've retired, things like this, that means that your job is impermanent. And now look at something simple like the weather. Is the weather permanent or impermanent? Well, of course, it's impermanent, right? It's sunny, it's raining, there's a hurricane, different things like this. There's snow in some places, there's a sandstorm here or there. There's all these different weather events. This is due to impermanence. So here you need to soak into the mind this universal truth of impermanence and be able to see the truth for yourself. And if you're not yet convinced through your own reflection that this is indeed a universal truth, you're going to need to go around the world and focus on this. Maybe walk down the street in your neighborhood, and when you walk down the street or the sidewalk and you see a crack in the sidewalk, that's impermanence. Or if you see that the paint on a fence has faded away, that's impermanence. Right? As you're going down the road, you might have pretty good quietness in your neighborhood, but then a car comes by and maybe beeps the horn or something like that. That's impermanence. First it was quiet, now there's a horn. Well, there was a horn, but now it's quiet again. That's impermanence too. So you're going to need to deeply see the truth that this is a universal truth. That's how you take something learning, then you start reflecting on it to independently verify it for yourself. Is this true or false? And then when you know it's true, now you've got wisdom. You understand that the things in the world are impermanent. Now we'll move to the second universal truth. This is called discontentedness. In the original teachings of the Buddha, there's a word there in the Pali Canon, the original source teachings, that he uses called dukkha, because the original teachings of the Buddha are in the Pali language. And most people are translating this word dukkha to suffering. So if you've learned the teachings of the Buddha in other places, you might have heard this word suffering being used. But some people translate dukkha to being discontent, discontented, or discontentedness, like what I'm doing. So I'm going to explain to you what discontentedness is, and then I'm going to circle back and explain to you why I don't use the word suffering. So these feelings of pleasant feelings, painful feelings, or neither painful nor pleasant, is how the Buddha describes dukkha. When he talks about dukkha in his teachings, he describes that the unenlightened mind has pleasant feelings, that there's painful feelings, and that there's feelings that are neither painful nor pleasant. The pleasant feelings are things like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria, and all those other pleasant feelings. Then there's painful feelings like sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, etc. There's other feelings like that are very painful to experience. Then there's neither painful nor pleasant. And I put in here boredom and loneliness, but some people say that's quite painful for them. So you could put that into the painful category if you like. But something like shyness, you can think about that as neither painful nor pleasant. Or if you are on public transportation and somebody came and sat really, really close to you and your body was touching their body, you'd probably say it's not painful, it's not pleasant. The mind is kind of uncomfortable or dissatisfied. That's what neither painful nor pleasant is. These three feelings of pleasant, painful, neither painful nor pleasant, these are called conditioned feelings. These feelings arise, they change, and then they fade away, because these feelings are based on some condition. So perhaps if the mind is unenlightened, somebody might look outside and see that it's sunny, and they're like, oh, wonderful, I'm so excited, yes, I'm going to go hiking today, absolutely wonderful, I'm bouncing off the walls, I'm so excited that it's sunny outside. So now they go take a shower, right? They've formed that feeling of happiness based on the condition of the sun. And now they go take this shower and they come out and they see that it's raining outside and they can't go hiking. And now they might be sad or frustrated. Because that feeling of happiness was based on the condition of the sun, and the sun is impermanent, that means their happiness is also impermanent. So this is a conditioned feeling. So the happiness arose, it changed, and it faded away. And now there's sadness in the mind. So essentially an unenlightened being is experiencing happiness when this condition is met, and this condition is met, and this condition is met, and this condition is met, then I will be happy. But if those conditions aren't met, then you might be sad or frustrated or angry. These are called conditional feelings. An enlightened being is beyond this. They don't base their inner feelings on some condition. An enlightened being would wake up and already be joyful and already be happy. They're experiencing unconditioned happiness. What unconditioned happiness is it's not based on any condition. So it's just always there. The joy is always there. They're beyond this up and down of the unenlightened mind. So if they see that it's sunny outside, they might be like, sweet, I'm going to go hiking today. Absolutely wonderful. I've been interested in going hiking for a long time. Let me go take a shower. And now when they take a shower and they come out and they see that it's raining outside, it's like, all right, well, it's raining. Maybe I'll stay home and read a book, or I'll go to the mall. Maybe I'll go to a friend's house. Maybe I'll go eat some food at a restaurant. I'll just do something else, right? No need to be frustrated or angry just because the weather changes, right? So this is what an enlightened being is experiencing, because they no longer base their inner feelings on some impermanent condition. They've awoke to the wisdom of what the unenlightened mind is doing, and they no longer do that. I'm going to explain to you why the mind is doing this in the Four Noble Truths, but this is a foundational teaching to understand discontentedness, that the mind is shaken up, it's unsteady, it's uncalm. That's what the unenlightened mind is experiencing, and these are conditional feelings. Some people refer to this as suffering, but when I use the word suffering, I think that explains the painful feelings really well, the sadness, anger, frustration, and others. But when you're experiencing happiness, excitement, elation, or that person you don't know comes and sits really close to you on the bus and your body is touching their body, you probably wouldn't say you were suffering in either of those situations, either when you're excited or elated, or if somebody was sitting next to you and your mind was experiencing this displeasure. So if we use the word suffering, it's only explaining 33% of what the Buddha shared, which is the painful feelings. That means you're missing 66% of his teachings. So it's important to use language and words and phrases that fully represent what it is that the Buddha describes. So rather than missing 66% of his teachings, if you use the word discontent, discontented, or discontentedness, this fully explains what the Buddha was talking about when he was describing dukkha in these conditioned feelings. Then there's this universal truth of non-self. This isn't really something that you need to understand in order to learn and practice the Four Noble Truths, but it is something you need in your journey to enlightenment. I'm going to explain to you what it is and help you to gain some understanding of it, but then I'm going to move past it and move into other teachings, because this particular teaching you're going to need to revisit multiple times. Oftentimes students don't understand it right from the beginning, so they oftentimes need multiple conversations to fully understand it. With the universal truth of impermanence and the universal truth of discontentedness, it's fairly straightforward, and you can learn it, you can reflect on it and verify it as being the truth, and then ultimately you'll learn how to practice it today. And by the way that you independently verify what the Buddha is saying about the universal truth of discontentedness is you try to disprove it. Here, what he's describing to you is the unenlightened mind, and you can look through the various feelings that you've had in your life and see, is the Buddha explaining what you experience? Because you know your mind's currently unenlightened, and he's explaining these three feelings that you experience as an unenlightened being. And if you have a certain feeling that doesn't fit into one of these categories, you can let me know, and then I will help you to be able to talk about it and discuss it and reflect on it. But now moving into the universal truth of non-self, this is actually a solution to one of the problems that the Buddha discovered in the mind. When we get into the group learning program a little bit further in a few weeks, we're going to be discussing what's called the 10 fetters. These 10 fetters are the 10 detailed problems that the Buddha discovers in the mind. Today you're going to learn about one of those significant problems, but ultimately, in order to get to enlightenment, you'll need to learn all 10. These are called the 10 fetters, or pollutions, or taints, or defilements. This is what's hindering the mind and keeping it in the unenlightened state. What a fetter is it's like a shackle around your ankle with a chain and a ball that's keeping you trapped, like a prisoner. And if one has these 10 fetters, the mind is polluted or defiled or tainted. And now with those 10 fetters in the mind, you can't experience the brightness and radiance and joy of the enlightened mind. But when you clear these pollutions out of the mind, then that brightness and radiance can shine through, and you can experience some of those benefits or all of those benefits. And we're going to go into them even a lot more as we talk about what is enlightenment in chapter 3. That peace, the calm, serenity, contentedness with joy, the focus, the concentration, the clarity of mind, the deep memory, the blossoming of your personal and professional relationships. You'll be able to heal from what hurt you so that you never need to hurt again. You'll see your mind will never be in a bad mood by the time you eliminate these fetters or these 10 pollutions. So out of these 10 fetters or these 10 pollutions, the very first one is called personal existence view. This universal truth of non-self is the solution to that, and it helps you to eliminate personal existence view. So let me explain what personal existence view is, and then I'll explain to you how the universal truth of non-self solves that and fixes that as you learn it more deeply and you practice it more closely. So what personal existence view, this fetter or this pollution or this taint is, this is how the unenlightened mind is holding on to this body and or this mind, thinking that this is who you are as a person. So the mind clings to the body or the self-image, wanting to be perceived in the world a certain way. And if the mind hears certain agreeable things or experiences agreeable contact, you'll get pleasant feelings. Or if the mind experiences the disagreeable contact, then you'll experience the painful feelings. So let me give you an example. If someone's like, oh, wow, David, you're wearing all white clothes. You look so handsome. It brings out the colors of your eyes. Then somebody might get all these pleasant feelings like, oh, wow, they're talking about me. And this is your self-image. And you're clinging to this body, thinking that this is who you are. And now the mind gets those pleasant feelings. But because of impermanence, it's only a matter of time before somebody says, David, you're so stupid wearing those white clothes. How could you go outside? You're going to get so dirty, right? You're such an idiot for wearing those white clothes. You look horrible, right? Somebody might say that at some point. Because of impermanence, not everybody is going to say polite, kind, friendly, respectful things. Well, if you cling to this body and this self-image, thinking that this is who you are, now when you hear that disparaging, degrading comment, you'll experience frustration and sadness, and you can't control what other people choose to do. So if you cling to this self-image, it's only a matter of time before you get discontent. So if you've ever dropped pizza sauce or chocolate ice cream or spaghetti sauce on your clothes and you were embarrassed, this was the personal existence view. That was that fetter. The mind wants to be perceived in the world a certain way, and when you're not perceived the way you want to be perceived, then you might struggle. Or if you have a wrinkle in your face and you're like, oh my goodness, a wrinkle, or a pimple, or you see your first gray hair, oh my goodness. Or if you lose your hair, you're starting to lose your hair, you might feel shaken up by that because you don't look the way you want to look. This is the mind clinging to the body, to the self-image, wanting to be perceived in the world a certain way. And then you have the same thing going on with the mind or the self-identity. If there's personal existence view in the mind is clinging to a certain identity in the mind, wanting to be perceived in the world through its self-identity. So let's say you might think like, I am American, or I am Canadian, or I am Spanish, or I am Brazilian, or I am Australian. Or you might think that I am a police officer, or I am a lawyer, or I am a doctor, or I am a Buddhist teacher. There's all this I am, or I am a mom, or I am a dad, or I am a husband, I am a wife, I am a boyfriend, I am a girlfriend. And now the same thing occurs. If you hear agreeable things about this identity that the mind's holding on to, you'll experience pleasant feelings, those conditional pleasant feelings based on the condition that somebody has said something agreeable to you. But now it's only a matter of time due to impermanence before someone says something degrading and disparaging. And now you'll experience the painful feelings. So if this mind thought that I am a Buddhist teacher, if someone says all Buddhist teachers are so friendly and loving and kind and generous, I might get these pleasant feelings based on the condition of somebody saying something agreeable. But it's only a matter of time before someone says, how dare those Buddhist teachers share those teachings? They're leading people to hell, right? And now if I identify as I am a Buddhist teacher and they're talking about me because they're talking about Buddhist teachers, now the mind's going to experience frustration or anger. So you can liberate the mind from all of this. You might have experienced that if you were in a certain job and you identified that this was who you are as a person, Say you were a police officer or a lawyer or something, then maybe you're retired, or you lost your job. Maybe you got injured or something like this and you couldn't do that job anymore. You might have struggled when you left that job, whatever your job was. Or if you were in a relationship with a husband or wife or a boyfriend or girlfriend, and then you were no longer together in a relationship, you might have tried to hurry up and get back into another relationship because you wanted to reassume that role, that identity, that self-identity in the mind. It struggled when you felt like, I am no longer a boyfriend, or I am no longer a girlfriend, or I am no longer a husband or a wife, or any of these other roles that you fulfill. So the identity can be things like your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your occupation. The mind can cling to this and think that this is who you are as a person. The mind's clinging to the self-image and self-identity. This is the body and the mind. And what the universal truth of non-self is saying is the Buddha shares that this isn't who you are. This body nor this mind is you. But the problem with personal existence view is the unenlightened mind thinks that this is who you are. So the mind's clinging to it, wanting it to be permanent. And when you experience this agreeable or disagreeable contact, you'll get shaken up. So there is a body, there is a mind, and it has come together. It is in existence. And we call this a person, or we call it a human being. But the Buddha says this isn't you. This isn't who you are. He says there is no you there. But the challenge is we use this language of English and we say, I am hungry, or I have a headache, or I am thirsty, or I am tired. We're using this I, or I am. Well, the language doesn't really represent true reality, because I am not hungry because there's no I here. True reality is the body needs food. That's the true reality, is that the body needs food. Or I do not have a headache because there's no I here. True reality is that the head hurts. That's what's going on with a headache, is the head hurts. But when we have this I am in the mind, the mind's clinging to it, wanting things to be a certain way. And when it doesn't get that, it struggles in the world. So this universal truth of non-self is helping you to see that there is no permanent self. Now, this is a little bit of the learning. And remember, you might have to revisit this a few times to understand it. It's very common for somebody to need to do that. But let's start reflecting on it so that you can start seeing the truth and independently verify that there is no self, even if you're not fully practicing it yet in dissolving the personal existence view. That's down the road for most students. But let's reflect on this. If you think about how you viewed yourself when you were a child, when you were a teenager, early adulthood, and then maybe now. If you look over the course of your life, the way you viewed yourself has been constantly changing. You haven't viewed yourself in the same way. Your personality, your character, the way you think about yourself, your self-image and your self-identity has been constantly changing. There you can see that there is no self. There's no permanent self. Another way that you can see this is think about the physical body, that if your arm was amputated, are you less of a person if your arm is amputated? Most people would say, no, I'm not less of a person. I have less use of an arm and a hand. I only have one arm and a hand now, but I'm not less of a person. So you understand to a certain degree intellectually that this body isn't you. But the mind is confused. It has this misunderstanding in the unenlightened state. It keeps holding on to this body thinking this is who you are. Even though that intellectually you might understand that this body isn't you, because if your arm's amputated, you would agree that, no, I'm not less of a person. I just have less of use of a hand and arm. Well, if this body is you and who you are, when I asked you that question about the amputation of your arm, you say, yes, I'm less of a person because I have less use of a hand and an arm. I'm less of a person. But you probably wouldn't have said that. And then here's a third way to independently reflect and verify the truth that there is no self. I oftentimes will ask students to point to yourself. Where are you? Can you point to yourself? And students will typically point to the chest or they'll point to the head. Okay, so someone's pointing to their chest. What are they really pointing to? They're pointing to a shirt. That's what they're pointing to. They're pointing to a shirt. So let's take off the shirt and we hold it up and we point to it and we say, okay, is that David? Or is that Miriam? Or is that Amber? Or is that Stephen? Is that Bruce? Or is that Cornelia? Is that shirt you? The answer is no, that shirt's not you. So, okay, let's throw away the shirt. Where are you? And then somebody might point again to the chest. What are they really pointing to? They're pointing to skin. Okay, let's take the skin. Let's hold up the skin. Is that you? Is that Miriam? Is that Stephen? Is that David? No, that's not me. Okay, throw away the skin. Okay, point. Now somebody might point again. Okay, we've got bones, we've got muscle tissue, we've got fluids, we've got organs. What part of that is David? There's no piece of that we can determine like this thing is David. There's just all these bits and pieces and parts, right? So this is how you can reflect on this. But like I mentioned, oftentimes people need more conversation and more discussion around the universal truth of non-self, which comes as you get moving into the teachings further and further. By the time we get to chapter 16, we're going to be diving into personal existence view really deeply. This retreat that I'm teaching here in Chiang Mai right now, we're going to be penetrating into it really deeply. We're going to be spending an entire class session on just personal existence view. And this is something that students often need to learn multiple times to be able to fully understand it. So this is at least an introduction to it, so you can start understanding that this body nor this mind is you, and you can start being observant. Are you embarrassed when you get, something spilled on this shirt? Or are you noticing that when somebody says something agreeable that you get all these pleasant feelings, or disagreeable and you get upset or frustrated? So you can start independently verifying this is true through reflecting over your life and even experiencing life now as you go through life. So let me pause and see if you guys have any questions. You can put those into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, and I'll be able to see your questions in the comment section and then answer them for you. And if you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any questions or follow-up questions directly. Okay, so it looks like we have some questions here coming in on Zoom. Bruce is asking, other than enlightenment, are there any other things that are unconditioned? So I found three things that are unconditioned. Enlightenment itself is unconditioned because by the time you get to enlightenment, you've unconditioned the mind. You've eliminated those pollutions. Those pollutions are conditions that are causing the mind to experience anger and frustration and other things. But by the time you train your mind to enlightenment, you've purified the mind. The mind is unconditioned, and now that mental state is permanent. That's the one thing. Then the next thing is the natural laws of existence, the teachings of the Buddha. What he described during his lifetime, 2,500 years ago, he described the natural laws. Those natural laws are the same natural laws that existed then, that exist now, and they will always exist. These natural laws of existence are permanent. They didn't arise, they don't change, and they don't fade away. The things that have changed in the world is when people wrote down the teachings and people's memories of the teachings. That's what's changed in the world and is affected by impermanence. But the natural laws themselves, they don't change. That's why you can independently verify what I'm sharing with you and see the truth for yourself. And then I kind of include this third one as part of enlightenment and the natural laws of existence, but I'll just mention it. If you have unconditional love, maybe for a parent or a child or other people in your life, unconditional love is unconditional. It doesn't arise, it doesn't change, and it doesn't fade away. You just always love this person. And we're going to be talking about that when we get to chapter 15 in this program, because oftentimes people are misunderstanding craving, desire, attachment, which you guys are going to learn about here in a moment. They're misunderstanding that as love, but that's not actually love. So there's something called unconditional love or true love, which is permanent. Okay, it looks like Stephen has a question here. Is it more accurate to say that there is no self or there is no permanent self? To me, it's the same thing. There is no permanent self. There is no self. There's no self at all. There is no permanent self. There's no self. There's no you there. That's the words of the Buddha where he says there is no you there. So you could say it either way. The mind, though, in the unenlightened state, thinks that there is a self. And this is the challenge. This is the confusion. This is the misunderstanding, that the mind is grasping for a you. Oftentimes when people hear about the universal truth of non-self, and I say that you're not the body, you're not the mind, and you're not the combination of these two things, they might say, okay, well, if I'm not those, what am I? What am I? This is the mind still grasping, still wanting to find a self. And ultimately what you would like to get to is what we call it realizing non-self, where you've realized in the mind that this body and this mind isn't you. It's not who you are. And this is called realizing non-self. And you would need to do this in order to get to the first stage of enlightenment. And then that's going to also help you to go beyond. Let's see. So Miriam here has, we need to abandon the labels that were assigned to us since we were born. Yes, there's all these labels that we get, even our own name, right? Like, I am David. I remember when I was younger and I would go to like school, if there was another person in the class named David, I would get angry. I'm like, I'm David. How can that be David, right? Well, I'm not David. There's millions of Davids in the world, so I can't be David. This was just a label that was given to us at birth in order to make it easy for people to understand who we are or who we're referring to. Because what we really have is we have this big bag of skin with bones and fluid and muscle tissue and things like this inside of it. But when David came home from school, Grandma had to say to Mom, like, hey, did David come home from school yet? And my mom said, yeah, David's doing his homework. I probably wasn't, but that's probably what she said, right? My grandmother couldn't say, did that big bag of skin and bones and fluid come home from school yet? She had to say, David, right? So we've been given all these different labels, and then there's these expectations assigned to them. What a perfect wife should be, what a perfect husband, what a perfect mom or dad should be. And then there's all these expectations that the mind is just clamoring to fulfill. But if you get rid of all these labels, and then you learn more and more about the wisdom of this path, you don't have to subscribe to all that stuff. That's part of the conditioning that the mind goes through. It's conditioned with all of these things. And now you're trying to get to this unconditioned mind. And that's what the universal truth of non-self is helping you to do among all these other teachings as well. Looks like Bruce has another question here. Is the mind already enlightened, but it is currently clouded by the 10 fetters, and we have to work to eliminate the 10 fetters? This is one of the ways that I explain enlightenment when we talk about enlightenment, is you can think about it as you need to attain enlightenment. Some people think of it that way, that you have to actually attain it. And some people think of it as the mind is already enlightened, but there's these pollutions that are in the mind that are hindering you from being able to experience enlightenment. So if you get rid of the pollutions, then the brightness of the enlightened mind can shine through. And this can really help you if you find yourself craving or longing and yearning for enlightenment itself. This can actually really help you so that you don't feel like you have to attain something. Because if there's something that you don't have and you have to attain it, the mind will oftentimes chase after it. Whereas if you think you already are enlightened, the mind is already enlightened, and you just got to get these pollutions out of the way, this can be a better way to look at it so that then you're not chasing after enlightenment itself. All right, great questions there. I saw something from you, Miriam, up here, but it didn't look like a question. I think it was something you might have been asking me. Oh, okay, I see. Yeah, no worries. Yeah, if you need to leave class, it's up to you. Let me see if we have any questions coming in from any of the other places and other platforms that we have here. Looks like we have something coming in here on YouTube. Am I the only one who cannot log in? I've tried Facebook and now YouTube. It looks like you're in YouTube now. So Rhonda, you should be able to be there. Or if you come to Zoom, you're welcome to come to Zoom as well. And then looks like, oh, there you are. I see you say you're in now. Okay, great. Looks like Tonka has a question. How to explain uncomfortable sensations that are not connected to the outside world, happening at the time or thinking in that moment? Are we saying that I don't exist? How would I experience anything if I do not exist? Okay, these are like two different questions, Tonka. So how to explain uncomfortable sensations that are not connected to the outside world happenings at the time or thinking in that moment. Let me answer that when we talk about the Four Noble Truths, because from there, then I can explain this for you. Are we saying that I do not exist? How would I experience anything if I do not exist? So we're saying that this body nor this mind is you, that there is no I there, but there is a physical body in existence, and there is a mind that is in existence. It's physically here. There's a physical body that's here. The mind is intangible. It's non-physical. You can't touch it. But these two things have actually come together. So there is a being that is in existence, but this body nor the mind is you. It's not who you are as a person. So we're not saying that this being that we refer to as Tonka is not in existence. That being is in existence, but the mind has to get to a point where you understand that the body nor the mind is you, or this self-image or this self-identity. It's not who you are as a person. Let's see if we have any questions on Facebook. Okay, it looks like my Facebook's frozen up again. I can't get into Facebook. So if any of you guys are hearing me on Facebook, I can't see your questions right now. There's been some glitch in Facebook that when the live streaming occurs, it kind of locks up and doesn't really show me. I know that the live streaming is running, but it's not showing me questions. So if you guys have questions in Facebook, you'll need to either come into Zoom or come into YouTube and ask your questions there so that I'll be able to see it. So let's go on to the next part of what I need to share with you in order to understand the Four Noble Truths and establish right view, and then we'll go into the Four Noble Truths itself. This is another building block to help you understand the Four Noble Truths. You need to understand craving, desire, attachment. We define these words in specific ways. There's also expectations, wants, holding, grasping, or clinging. What craving, desire, attachment is this is the mental longing for something with a strong eagerness. It's like the mind is pulling in the direction of the objects of its affection. It's yearning, it's longing, it's chasing after certain objects, thinking that the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction. So the mind chases and chases and chases and chases and chases after it. This is called a craving, desire, attachment. Some people say it feels like they're being pulled towards something, or they feel like they're being pushed. The craving, desire, attachment isn't the object itself. It's inside the mind. It's deeply rooted inside the mind, where the mind wants things to be a certain way or expects things. It's chasing after things. If you've ever been in the mall and you saw a new pair of shoes and you're like, oh, a new pair of shoes. Yes, 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 yes. I want that so badly. Or if you saw a new phone or a new computer or a new shirt or some, golf clubs or something like this, if you chase after it and you thought this external thing was going to complete you, or maybe a boyfriend or a girlfriend, you might have chased and chased and chased and you wanted it so badly, you felt the mind almost pulling towards it. The mind can almost become obsessed sometimes and feel like there's an obsession in the mind as it chases after this thing. And there's a certain spectrum of craving. You can have really strong cravings or you can have very minor ones. But this is what craving, desire, attachment is, the mental longing and strong eagerness. And you should be able to see through your own direct experience that you've experienced these at different times in your life. So now let's talk about the Four Noble Truths so you can understand what these are and have this breakthrough where you finally understand what's causing the mind to be sad, angry, frustrated, and all these other discontent feelings. Well, the first noble truth is explaining that everyone that is unenlightened will experience discontentedness. For some reason, I see on my slides here on Zoom, it cut off the word discontentedness. I'm not sure why, but it's cutting that off. So it should be everyone that is unenlightened will experience discontentedness. So there we see some impermanence, right? This slide is usually just fine, but for some reason it's not showing the entire word. That's some impermanence for us. So here the Buddha is describing the problem. The unenlightened mind is going up and down and up and down and up and down. You might experience some peacefulness and some calmness here and there, but it's only a matter of time before the mind becomes irritated or agitated or annoyed or some other discontent feeling. Then we have the second noble truth, which is explaining the cause of that problem. Discontentedness is caused by our own cravings, desires, attachments, because the mind wants everything to be permanent, when everything in the world is impermanent? I'm going to explain that a couple of times, and I'm going to give you some examples as well. Discontentedness, those conditioned feelings of pleasant, painful, neither painful nor pleasant, is caused by our own cravings, desires, attachments, those mental longing, the strong eagerness, the chasing after the objects of your affection. And if you get what you want, you get pleasant feelings. But if you don't get what you want, you get painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, and others. Because the mind wants things to be permanent, but yet everything in the world around us is impermanent. This is the second noble truth. It's explaining the cause. It's explaining why your mind is becoming discontent because of the craving, desire, attachment, because of those longing and yearning. Again, if you get what you want, you get pleasant feelings. If you don't get what you want, you get painful feelings. So let me give you some examples to help you understand this. This is the reflection part. You've already done the learning a little bit. Now let's do the reflection so you can independently verify this. So think about a time when you might have been with a boyfriend or girlfriend or a husband or wife, and you guys first got together. You were getting certain affection, getting attention. Maybe they were inviting you to the movies or to dinner. You might have even had intimate contact at different times. And the mind was experiencing these conditional pleasant feelings based on the condition that this person was showing you affection or showing you attention and trying to invite you out to dinner and movies and things like this. These were conditional pleasant feelings. And now, as time went on, for whatever reason, the relationship ended. And now when that relationship ended, you got painful feelings. You got the sadness, the anger, the frustration, or some other discontent feeling. Because the mind was craving for this relationship to be permanent. The mind was longing, yearning, wanting this relationship to be permanent. Because the unenlightened mind doesn't understand impermanence. It didn't realize this relationship was impermanent. It was always impermanent. Even if you guys were together for the rest of your life, more likely than not, one of you would have died first. This relationship is impermanent, but the mind's craving permanence. It's wanting this relationship to be permanent. And when it didn't get what it wanted, that's when it moved to the conditioned painful feelings. As long as it was getting what it wanted, which was the affection, the time and attention and all the other things, all its conditions were met. So the mind was experiencing those pleasant feelings, those conditional feelings. But then when those conditions weren't met anymore, now the mind moved to the painful feelings. So this is one example. Here's another example, a bit more simple. If you've ever bought a brand new car, some brand new thing, say you got a brand new red shiny sports car with a convertible top and you're signing the papers and you drive it off the lot and you feel such pleasant feelings. You worked so hard to get this car and now you're driving around the neighborhood and people are waving to you and seeing you. You feel really great, all these pleasant feelings based on the condition of this brand new car. Well, now you park it at a store and you go inside and you come out to the car and you see a scratch on the car. Oh my goodness, this frustration, this irritation, this annoyance, or some other discontent feeling might arise in the mind. It's not because of the scratch. It's not because of the person who caused the scratch, right? We're not talking about what's right or wrong, because it'd be wonderful if nobody ever scratched your car. But we live in this impermanent world that the car is going to get a scratch because it's impermanent. This red shiny sports car is not permanent. It's going to eventually get a scratch on it. And now when the mind sees that impermanence, it doesn't understand impermanence in the unenlightened state. It's craving permanence. And now that scratch, seeing that impermanence, the mind has these painful feelings that arise. It's not because of the scratch or the person who caused it. It's because of the craving in the mind. It's the longing and yearning, wanting to keep this car permanent. You can see the same thing if you've ever experienced somebody close to you that's passed away. If you went to a funeral or you've heard news that somebody close to you has died, you might have grieved or felt sorrow or sad during that situation. It's not the love that's causing that. Oftentimes people think it's the love that's causing your grief, but love doesn't cause grief. Love is a genuine interest in seeing another being be well. right? What's causing the grief when grandma or grandpa died, or mom or dad, or friends or family died, is the mind's craving permanence. The mind's wanting this being to be permanent, but yet they died. It represents this impermanence. Because they were born, they had to die. But the unenlightened mind is craving for this person to be permanent. Or if you ever been to a wedding and you grieved at a wedding, or people around you were grieving, this is the mind craving permanence. They're wanting brother or sister or their children to be with them permanently. And going to a wedding represents this impermanence where they go off into the world, and the mind is confronted with this impermanence, that their child or their friend or family member is not permanent and is not going to be with them permanently. The same thing happens when a child goes off to college, that oftentimes a parent can grieve when they're sending their child to college, because once again, there's this impermanence that the mind experiences. Even though the parent has intellectually been teaching their child for 18 years or longer, and always knowing that their kid is going to go away to college, the mind is still grasping and still clinging and still holding on to this individual. So when they go off to college, the mind can really struggle during that time. This is the mind craving permanence. So this is the part where I've been sharing with you and helping you learn and do a little bit of reflection. But now let's reflect even deeper so you can really see the truth. I'd like you to think about a recent time where you've been angry or frustrated or irritated or annoyed. It might have been today, it might have been yesterday, it might have been last week. Look at that situation. Prior to learning this, you might have been blaming other people, because that's what the unenlightened mind usually does, is it blames other people for the feelings that you're having. And you'll either push a person away, you might become bitter and harsh and hostile with that person, or you might put your expectations on that person, trying to get them to do things your way. But now that you have this new wisdom, that before you might have been blaming other people, or you might have been trying to blame other people, instead with this new wisdom, reflect on that same situation where your mind was irritated, annoyed, angry, frustrated, or something else. There was something your mind wanted and it didn't get it. If you would have got what you wanted, you would have been happy, but you didn't get what you wanted. So your mind became frustrated, irritated, or annoyed. So if you look at this situation and you can see the truth for yourself through your own direct experience, then you can independently verify this. If you're having difficulties independently verifying it, you can share that with me and I will help you. I've had students share with me before that, they came home from work and they saw that their partner had the house a wreck, that there was stuff all over the house. And when they walked in, they got angry and frustrated. They're like, how did I cause my own anger? Because I wasn't even home. My wife is the one who put everything all over the house. How did my mind cause its own anger? Because that's essentially what the second noble truth is explaining to you, is that your mind is causing its own anger. Well, then I needed to explain to them, well, your mind was craving for the house to look a certain way. You left from work and you wanted the house to look a certain way permanently. And when you came home and you saw this impermanence, now your mind didn't like that. And that's why the mind became angry or frustrated. So what the second noble truth is helping you to see is that your mind is causing its own discontent feelings. And this is really empowering, because if you understand that your mind is causing your own discontent feelings, then that means you can eliminate them. Because what the mind oftentimes wants to do is go around the world and teach everybody to do things your way. And the mind thinks if you can just teach everyone to do things your way, then the world will be perfect. So you might be trying to teach your partner or your children or your other family members to do things your way. And this is a real burden. And sometimes you get what you want and you're happy. Other times you don't and you get angry or sad or frustrated. And the problem with this approach is there's 8 billion people in the world. You can't train 8 billion people to do things your way. You can only train one mind, truly. And that's going to be challenging enough. And that's your own mind, right? So you can't go out into the world and train other people to do things your way. And as long as there's craving in the mind and one has wrong view, when there's wrong view, that means we're blaming other people for the feelings that we experience. You are making me angry. That is annoying me. You are frustrating me. This is how we tend to talk in the unenlightened state. But if you understand right view and you establish right view, then what you understand is that it's craving, desire, attachment that's causing the discontent feelings. With wrong view, and you're blaming other people, like I mentioned, you'll tend to push people out of your life. This is called aversion. And people might think that this solves the problem, but it doesn't solve the problem when you push people out of your life, because you just get irritated or angry about the next thing. And it doesn't work when you become bitter and harsh and hostile and aggressive with people, because they'll choose to leave out of your life, or they'll become bitter and harsh and aggressive with you right back. And if you put your expectations on people and try to control people to do things your way, this just puts pressure on people, and then they'll choose to leave your life that way as well. So when you have craving, desire, attachment in your mind, you have this long list of expectations of what the mind wants. And now the list of people that you can spend time with becomes smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. There's fewer and fewer people that you can spend time with, because the mind keeps getting discontent, and not everybody can meet all those growing expectations and those growing conditions. So if you find that you're in that situation now, it's okay. You're learning what you need to learn in order to overcome that, because the goal would be to be able to reside harmoniously with all beings, where you don't want and crave and expect and long and yearn for all these things to be a certain way. But also, if you never did anything and you just, allowed people to do anything and everything, then your mind wouldn't be content there either. So you need to find this middle way that we're going to be talking about when we get to chapter 6. But here in the Four Noble Truths and establishing right view, I'm helping you to see that it's your own mind that's causing these discontent feelings, so that you can accept responsibility for these feelings. This is what's going to help you to move on to the rest of the path to enlightenment. Because as long as your mind falsely believes or has the misunderstanding that other people are causing you to be angry, then that means everyone else needs to learn how to do things your way. You need a training program to train the world how to do things your way. There's 8 billion people. We need to start writing books. We need to get a training program going on. We need to get everyone in the world to agree with how you do things. And that's the only way the mind can get to peacefulness, right? And then there's people that are constantly being born all the time. So now you're going to need to train those new people coming into the world too, right? So it's going to be a constant ongoing program. Or you can just focus on training one mind. That's the way that you can get to freedom, to liberation, to freedom from these strong feelings. So that's what the rest of the path is going to help you learn. So this third noble truth is explaining that to eliminate discontentedness is possible by eliminating cravings, desires, attachments. So if the second noble truth is explaining the cause, which is craving, desire, attachment, then the third noble truth is explaining how to eliminate it. This is through eliminating cravings, desires, attachments. And then the fourth noble truth is explaining that the path to eliminate discontentedness is the Eightfold Path. It's the Eightfold Path that is going to teach you how to eliminate craving, desire, attachment. That's the complete perfect plan that the Buddha figured out during his lifetime that is now going to teach you how to eliminate craving, desire, attachment. And just a heads up for you, there's a couple of things that you can learn here at this point that's going to help you eliminate cravings, desires, attachments, but you're going to learn the bulk of this as we get moving further into the program. Breathing mindfulness meditation is helping you to eliminate cravings, desires, attachments, that when the mind moves off the breath, you're cutting that off, letting it go, and bringing the mind back. Because when craving, desire, attachment is in the mind, it's going to hold on and hold on and hold on. But you're training the mind to let go, to let go, to let go. So that meditation, a breathing mindfulness meditation, is not to eliminate your thoughts. As long as you're alive, you're going to have thoughts. But you're training the mind to easily let them go. So with mindfulness or awareness of mind and concentration, you're training the mind to be focused and concentrated, have clarity of mind, have awareness of the mind, so that then when the mind is longing, yearning, and having craving, you can cut that off and let it go. This is what the breathing mindfulness meditation is doing for you. And then you're practicing generosity. Again, we're going to be talking about all these things as part of this program, but you can already be looking to do some of these things of building up your breathing mindfulness meditation practice, and also practicing generosity, where you're giving and sharing with the people around you. Because when the mind has craving, desire, attachment, it's holding on. It's wanting things to be permanent. It's selfish. It oftentimes becomes selfish when you have craving, desire, attachment in the mind. You're not willing to give and share. But when you train your mind to give and share, it's helping the mind to let go and be willing to do so. So it's the Eightfold Path that's going to teach you in totality as the core central teaching of how to train the mind to eliminate craving, desire, attachment. But here with the Four Noble Truths, you're getting this little window into what's causing the discontentedness in the mind. The craving, desire, attachment is what's causing the discontentedness. And then you learn and practice all the other steps in order to eliminate that. But before we move on to the next step, which is right intention, let me pause here and see what questions you guys might have about any of the things that I've been describing so far. Remember, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section, or you can electronically raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions or follow-up questions directly. Okay, I'm not seeing anything in Zoom, and I don't see anything in YouTube. And for those of you guys on Facebook, I'm still unable to see anything there. So let's move on to right intention so that you guys can understand what right intention is. This is the second step of the Eightfold Path. And we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to use the words of the Buddha so you can understand what he taught, and then you can learn, reflect, and practice and start seeing the truth for yourself. Here, what the Buddha is describing is he says, in what, monks, is right intention? The intention of renunciation, the intention of non-ill will, the intention of harmlessness. This, monks, is called right intention. Well, some people translate this as right thinking or right thought, because even the translations of how people translate, it's impermanent. For me and others, we translate it as right intention, because this is the intention of what you would like to cultivate in the mind. But the right thinking or right thought is also descriptive as well, because there's these three aspects of right intention or right thinking or right thought. The Buddha talks about renunciation, non-ill will, which is actually goodwill, because this is a double negative. Non-ill will is the same thing as goodwill, and the intention of harmlessness. So now let's look at each one of these individually. What the intention of renunciation is this is the interest and willingness to let go and give up the unwholesomeness that the mind is holding on to. Certain false beliefs or false perceptions of reality, certain misunderstandings or confusions that the mind has. There's certain beliefs and opinions or views that the mind is holding on to that are false. This is one of the reasons why the mind is experiencing the anger, frustration, and other discontent feelings. That there are certain things you've learned in life that are true, and then there are certain things that you've learned in life that are false beliefs or false perceptions or misunderstandings or confusions. And you need to train your mind to be willing to let those go. And you're replacing that with wisdom. As you're learning, reflecting, and practicing, you're moving out the false beliefs and false perceptions and bringing in wisdom. This is renunciation, being willing to let go, essentially have an open mind. One of the primary things that you need to learn to let go of or have renunciation and eliminate false beliefs and false perceptions, we just talked about it with right view as part of the Four Noble Truths. Up until today, you might have had the wrong view, or you might have had the misunderstanding or the false belief or false perception that other people are causing you to be angry, or that music is annoying me. It's not the music that's annoying you, it's the craving, desire, attachment in the mind. So you need to be willing to let go of your false beliefs and false perceptions, but you do that through acquiring wisdom. You don't just blindly let go of the things that you've learned over the course of your life, but there are certain false beliefs or misperceptions or misunderstandings or confusions that the mind is holding on to that you need to be willing to let go of. We also refer to this as ignorance or the unknowing of true reality. The mind has this unknowing of true reality that it has in the mind, and you need to uproot that and get that out and now bring in the wisdom. So you need to have the intention of renunciation. If you're just holding on to everything you're doing now and you think that your mind is perfect and everything in your life is perfect and you don't need to do anything in order to improve upon what you're doing in life, then you wouldn't be practicing the intention of renunciation. You're just holding on and holding on and holding on. So renunciation is the willingness to let go and give up this unwholesomeness that's in the mind, these false beliefs and false perceptions or misunderstandings. Then there's this intention of non-ill will. What ill will is animosity, bitterness, the anger, hatred, and lesser versions. So if you have non-ill will, then you're not interested in being bitter and harsh and hostile or aggressive or having animosity. Instead, you're practicing goodwill, having the intention of goodwill. What goodwill is having this genuine interest in seeing other beings be well. We also refer to this as loving kindness. I'm going to teach you guys how to cultivate loving kindness as part of our 4-part series on loving kindness meditation. And then we're going to be talking about loving kindness at different times during our program. So here the Buddha is helping you to gain the wisdom to understand that you need to develop the intention or the thinking or the thought of having a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. And this is important because of the third aspect of right intention. It's called the intention of harmlessness. The intention of harmlessness is to not cause harm or be incapable of causing harm, that you're uninterested in causing harm to other beings. Harming other beings is like injuring their material possessions or their physical body or their reputation or things like this. If you're causing harm to others, material possessions or physical body or reputation, this harm can come back to you. This is the natural law of karma. As you put out harm, this harm is going to come back to you. So you need to have the wisdom to set the intention or the thinking or the thought that you're not interested in causing harm to other beings, that you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm to others. This is called harmlessness. So these are the 3 aspects of right intention: the intention of renunciation, non-ill will, and harmlessness. And this makes up the wisdom section of the Eightfold Path. And there's other wisdom that you need to learn besides this, but just in terms of the core central teaching to get you headed in the right direction towards enlightenment, this is the wisdom section of the Eightfold Path. Let me know if you guys have any questions on this particular step. All right, I'm not seeing any questions here. So what I'd like to do then is just end with a summary. Actually, I might have just seen a question come in. Okay, so we just had a question from Miriam. She says, how about when we harm people because we don't behave the way they expect, being people pleaser? Okay, so this isn't harm. If somebody's expecting something out of you, that's their craving, desire, attachment. That's the Four Noble Truths. They're having a certain expectation, a craving, a longing, a yearning. So say somebody wants you to only speak on the phone for 10 minutes, but you decide to speak on the phone for 30 minutes. And now when you get off the phone, they had to wait for you for 20 minutes and now they're angry and they're frustrated. You haven't harmed this person. They're causing their own discontentedness. You haven't harmed their material possessions, their physical body, or their reputation. They're choosing to get angry because of their craving, desire, attachment. They might not understand that if they haven't learned the Eightfold Path and established right view. They might firmly believe you're the one that's causing them to be angry. But it's important for you to understand that you're not causing their anger. They're causing it themselves because of their craving, desire, attachment. So when they're coming at you or yelling or hollering or upset or trying to put a guilt trip on you or whatever they're trying to do because you didn't meet their expectations and get off the phone in 10 minutes, you can understand that they're causing their own discontentedness. So you can harm others through your conduct, but you can't cause them discontentedness. They're causing it themselves. Okay, let me just circle back. Oh, Tonka, it looks like you deleted your questions. I guess maybe I answered it as we were talking because I know that I was supposed to answer your question there. All right, so if you would like to ask that question again, Tonka, you can feel free to post it again in YouTube and I'll answer it. So here in the summary for today's class is understanding right view is the Four Noble Truths, accepting responsibility for your own feelings, your intentions, your speech, and your actions. This is ensuring that you understand that you're responsible and you have accountability for your own feelings. Again, when we have wrong view, we tend to blame those things on other people. But if you can see the truth in the Four Noble Truths, then this is where you know that your mind is causing its own discontent feelings. If you're having trouble seeing that, it's important to reach out and get some help, whether you ask questions in class, you post it in the Facebook group, you send me a private message, or you schedule a personal guidance session so that I can help you to be able to see this more and more clearly, having some examples from your life. Because one of the things that you can do now that you've learned the Four Noble Truths and you've reflected on it, and maybe you're starting to see that it's true, well, now you can start practicing the Four Noble Truths. You're not going to be able to snap your fingers just because you intellectually know the Four Noble Truths. You're not going to be able to get rid of your anger by snapping your fingers, because those cravings are deeply rooted in the mind. It's going to take many months and even years for you to gradually transform the mind towards the enlightened mental state. But now if you intellectually understand it, or you're starting to understand it, or you have some personal guidance where I help you to understand it more fully, now the way that you can practice this is in the past where you might have gotten angry or frustrated or irritated and you look for somebody to blame. Instead, don't do that anymore. When you notice that your mind's angry or frustrated or irritated, step back from the situation, put a pause on it, and look internally. Look at your own mind. There's something that the mind's craving, it's longing, it's yearning, it's wanting, it's desiring, it's expecting something. And if you have trouble seeing what your attachments are, that's where you can also reach out to me by posting in the Facebook group, sending a private message, asking questions in class, or scheduling personal guidance, and I will be able to help you to be able to see where your mind's craving. And oftentimes early in practice like this, when you're first getting started, it's not just one craving. There can be one or two or three or four or five. Usually the more intense your anger or frustration, the deeper the attachment is, or the deeper the craving is, or the more of them that there are. They're kind of layered on top of each other. But sometimes you can have just a little simple craving that you're just irritated, you're just annoyed, you just kind of dislike the way that person's doing things. And it kind of goes away fairly quickly, but it's still a certain craving in there. So there's this spectrum of craving from kind of little minor ones all the way up to real significant ones. And these can be layered on top of each other and really arise some intense rage in somebody's mind. So by the time we get to the mental discipline section, I'm going to be providing you some tools that the Buddha taught of what to do in those situations. You're going to be learning that 2 weeks from now. But it's important that you layer these teachings and you learn something like this wisdom section of right view and right intention, and you step away for a week or so and think about this, and you start reflecting on this in your own life. Where you see that your mind is irritated or annoyed or frustrated, you start looking inward. Instead of looking outward and blaming other people around you, instead you can look inward. Because the question like Tonka had about what's going on in the mind when there's nothing external going on, this is the mind itself just wanting things to be a certain way. So let's just say, using Tonka's example of, what happens when it's not somebody else that you want to do something, but your own mind is irritated by itself. You might be thinking about something in the past, something very painful that happened in the past. And now, because the mind's thinking about something in the past, in the present moment, you can be angry or frustrated or irritated because the mind's longing and yearning. It's wanting things to be a certain way. And now when you're having this memory of something from the past, you can get irritated and annoyed in the present moment. Or you can be thinking about the future and wanting something to occur in the future. You can be longing and yearning and wanting things to happen a certain way. And now you feel anxiety in the present moment because you're wanting something in the future. Nothing's transpired. You might just be laying in bed with your eyes closed, but yet feeling anxiety because you're craving and longing and yearning for something to occur in the future. This is all explained through the Four Noble Truths. So now you can start looking at this. And like I mentioned, as you need help, reach out. You're not going to be able to just learn this intellectually and snap your fingers and the mind's fixed. But this is providing you the wisdom to then be able to build on all the other factors of the Eightfold Path. And then what right intention is, this is the second step of the Eightfold Path. This is where you're practicing the intention of renunciation, being willing to let go and give up your false beliefs and misperceptions and misunderstandings and confusion, essentially maintaining an open mind, and the intention of non-ill will or goodwill, which is loving kindness, and the intention of harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm to other beings. Right now, you might not have that, right? You might not have that intention. There might be certain people that you just want to turn their buttons a little bit. Maybe you don't want to see something significantly harmful happen to them. You're not interested in them being murdered or something like that, perhaps, but maybe you just want to turn their buttons sometimes, kind of poke them a little bit. The mind has that intention of wanting to harm or being harmful. So you would like to arise the intention of harmlessness, where you're disinterested in seeing other beings be harmed in any way. So let me open up to any and all questions that you guys have, because this is everything that I had to share with you guys on today's class, to talk about the Eightfold Path, this core central teaching that the Buddha shares in helping to prepare you to then move on to understand the moral conduct and mental discipline over the next 2 classes. So it looks like Steve is saying, thank you for the lesson today, much appreciated. You're welcome, Stephen. Pleased to share with you and everyone else as well. Let's see, I don't see any other questions anywhere. So what I'll do then is I'll just end class by doing what I typically do, which is thanking all of you for choosing to learn and practice these teachings. Because as you learn and practice these teachings, you're going to be causing less and less harm in the world. This is going to be good for you because you're going to be experiencing less and less harm coming back to you. It's going to be great for the people around you because you're causing them less and less harm. And it's going to be great for the world at large, all of humanity, because as more and more people in the world become enlightened, we'll create more and more peacefulness and more joy in the world. And we won't have this hostility and bitterness. And over multiple generations, we might experience what we would refer to as heaven on earth, where everybody's loving and kind and caring and respectful and all of these things. But that's not the world we live in. Right now, we have people that are aggressive and hostile and bitter and harsh, and you can train your mind to be unaffected by those things. So notice that what I've taught you, it isn't about punishment and rewards. It's not about anything mystical or magical or superstitious. It's not about rites or rituals or ceremonies or worship. That's not what the Buddha taught. He taught this wisdom that your mind is gradually awakening to so that you understand this world around you. Because it's a real struggle to live in a world that you don't understand. How many times have you watched the news, or how many times have you been at work or talked to your family member and I just don't understand this person. I don't understand why people do these things. Well, by the time you train on this path and you get to enlightenment, you'll understand exactly why people are doing the things that they do. But as long as you don't understand this natural laws of existence in this world that you live in, it'll be really real difficult to live in. So you can overcome those struggles and difficulties by walking towards the challenges that you experience, cultivating wisdom and overcoming it. And that's what the Buddhist teachings are going to do for you. So as you need help, feel free to reach out to me. Next class on Sunday, we're going to be learning the moral conduct section of right speech, right action, and right livelihood. And in the meantime, if you'd like to read chapter 4 and the first part of chapter 5, you can see what it is that I just shared with you. And there's other mini videos and there's other classes that I've taught on this same topic as well. And then next week, we'll go into that next section. And then on Wednesday, we're going to be in our second part of our 4-part series where I'm helping you to build your breathing mindfulness meditation practice. And if you're not able to attend Wednesdays, which is sometimes normal for people, those are all recorded in our YouTube channel, on our podcast, and our Facebook page. You can see those videos in the podcast from when I taught the first session, the second, and so forth and so on. And this can help you. So you can digest it on Wednesday evening or Thursday or Friday, Saturday, or some other day. And that way you can build your meditation practice because you're going to need that in place. So that's why I'm helping students to build that very early on as you develop your practice. And all of this is coming together and helping you to build this life practice or develop your life practice towards the attainment of enlightenment. So thank you all for your questions. Thank you for deciding that today is a day that you would like to learn the teachings of the Buddha. Thank you for choosing to learn with me as your teacher, and we'll see you guys in one of these future classes. Have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. Sawadee Kap.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To provide support for this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha. To access more teachings, visit buddhadailywisdom.com. There, you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Remember to establish a daily, consistent meditation practice, along with learning and practicing these teachings. A well-developed meditation practice is the foundation in which to train the mind to attain enlightenment.